Hi class, this is Professor Koji from Management 360, and this is our Chapter 3 lecture on building trust. So, benefits of trust in organizations, and more specifically, why is trust important and how does it benefit a business? Well, first is increases recruitment and retention, meaning if you are trying to build a good reputation, you really want to focus on the trust of your organization. That really attracts the top talent to get them to come to your place of business. It promotes a sense of belonging and identification within the organization. So people are emotional beings, and you really need to be supportive and give them some identification and a belonging. It's almost like a family, and you trust your family, and that's what a lot of organizations try to do is capture that family feel. It builds support for leaders and organizational goals. Trust builds a following, and obviously, without a following, managers of a company they can't really lead effectively. So it's vitally important for leaders to be cultivating this trust. It enhances productivity because it enables employees to focus on the value added work. It inspires people to go above and beyond the call of duty, especially if others are gaining your trust, you're more willing to look out for them and help them. And this is where when you're looking at talk about this later, but cross departmental collaboration, it's so vitally important that you're building these trust circles so that when you do go outside of your immediate group and you're helping or need help from a different group within an organization, it's easier to do so. Um, Trust is important also because it enhances communication, it enhances cooperation, and reduces conflict, and it reduces all the cost of negotiations, and the cost meaning the time it takes to do so. Time is money in business, and so if you have a team that trusts each other, everyone's guards go down, and that alone allows for a more efficient teamwork. Enhances cross-departmental collaboration. Kind of just touch upon that, but being in the corporate world myself, I can tell you that cross-departmental collaboration can sometimes be a challenge. It's a challenge because each department has its own little culture, and especially if you're in a huge company and there may be an overarching culture, but within each team, it could be dysfunctional or it could be amazing. It really is dependent upon that leadership within that team. And that culture could be one of resentment, competition, and it just could be just a non-trusting environment. And it's really difficult to be working with those types of those individuals, and it really makes collaboration extremely tough. Trust is important as it promotes organizational change. So, if you trust your executives and you trust your managers, you're more likely to buy into any organizational change that may be occurring, even if you're skeptical about the change itself. So, trust gives you, as a manager, ultimate flexibility with your decisions. Certainly helps organizations survive crisis. So it's very easy for your employees to jump ship when there's something bad happens. Uh, it's unfortunate, but in these days and times, when these bigger organizations are trying to make cuts, they're letting people go, and that could really put a strain on trust and trust in the organization. But you kind of have to be that sounding board to help your team navigate through it and try to keep the pieces together. So, and and so if you've created this great culture within your own team and you've developed and you've cultivated great relationships, the more likely will people will stay and be loyal to you. That's just fact. It enables virtual teams to handle the uncertainty and complexity of the virtual environment. This is probably the most relevant one here, especially during these times and of COVID. A lot of companies are offering video briefings, daily video briefings or weekly video briefings where senior leadership and is really embracing the importance of reaching that virtual audience, especially now with so many people working from home. How do you, there's no other way to gain that trust. It's getting on video, talking to everyone, soliciting questions, answering them on air. And video really helps with trust. And doing them frequently really instills a huge level of confidence in your leadership, that they're willing to get up there, be transparent as much as possible. But they have to be trustworthy, they have to be telling the truth. If what diminishes trust more than anything is what people will say one thing and do the other. And it's important that if your leadership is going to be on video, if you're going to be on video telling your extended team about something and it's not true, or you're trying to cover something up, that will hugely diminish trust. So what about new managers and fostering trust there? And a lot of the times with new managers, when I say new manager, I'm saying that someone who's been an individual contributor who has not had direct reports becomes a new manager, or becomes a manager, I should say. So these new managers, especially those that were excellent individual contributors, just top tier employee, did everything right, just killed it. They have a hard time moving into a manager mentality and are stuck trying to prove their technical competence rather than focusing their commitment to their team. So you feel that you've just been promoted, you have to really stand out more. You're getting more money, you got a bigger job title, and you're thinking, man, I got to look out for myself, and I really have to prove myself by my contributions. And they fail to recognize that their most important contribution is the development of their team, is putting them in the position to be successful, right? And then, so the thing is that when you don't focus on your new team, your new direct reports, you're missing incredible opportunities to build trust and goodwill among them. And if they're seeing you putting yourself out there and not bolstering them and not putting them higher on the pedestal, if you're just looking out for yourself and you're taking credit for what your team's doing and you're not passing praise, that will lead to a terrible culture. People will be leaving you, and you will not be successful as a manager. So why discuss trust? Why this trust in this class? Why is it in the book? So we sort of live in a complex world that we cannot fully understand, in which we need to depend on people with whom we can never completely know, and rely on organizations that do not exist for the sole purposes of meeting our needs. They meet their own. So how do you get trust out of that? So as a manager, if you become a manager, your sole purpose is to get the most out of your employees. And in order to do that, you need to create a comfortable and safe environment for you to ultimately accomplish your goals. And that means being flexible when your people need time off. If their son or daughter has a basketball game, that's you asking about their families, getting involved at an emotional level. Going to bat for them when they're faced with a really bad situation. You're stepping up and you're helping them. You're praising them when often. You're stepping in to shield them from any negative feedback that maybe come unnecessarily, and maybe becomes a coaching opportunity for them. And there's so many other things. So you have the power to create a trusting environment. You own that team. So those types of environments are just not made from thin air. You're not going to become a manager and inherit it. It needs to be developed over time, especially if you're taking over a team. There's going to be tons of apprehension. Is this guy going to be, or gal going to be better than the last person? How are they going to treat me bad? Their guards are going to be up. So when you first start, you really have to almost overcompensate in that manner. So what is trust? Talk about trust. What is it? So trust is a willingness to ascribe good intentions to and have confidence in the words and actions of other people. So this is about, who you trust, right? So when you think about who you trust, your parents, your grandparents, your best friend, a coach, a mentor, what makes them trustworthy? What makes those people trustworthy? And why is that person more trustworthy than a stranger off a street? So it's really comes down to, it's due to the confidence in the other person's ability through experience and relationship building to be truthful, honest, and your own personal belief that they have the best intentions in mind. So you are put in a state where you can automatically assume positive intent. You would leave them to watch your kids or your dog. You would trust that they'll pay you back if they ask for a loan, or you're just relying on them to be there for you when you need them most. And trust means different things to different people, but I think we all can agree that trust is just a fundamental in building strong relationships, which is most important in business. So trust has been called many things: social lubricant, invisible asset, collaborative capital, hidden source of wealth, the heart of relationships. And trust in organizations, as it said here, is a competitive advantage that can't be copied by others. Trust is not copywritten. You can't copyright trust. It's an emotion. It's a feeling. It's created through the goodwill of people and management and leaders. And so that's why trust is such a competitive advantage, because, and especially online now, you're afforded the right to see other people's experiences at a company. So it's almost like Amazon, where you can see the ratings. So you can see ratings. If you go on LinkedIn and some other job posting, you can see the rating that others have given these companies. And if one's rated a 4.5 and one's rated a 2, that could really sway your decision on where you want to work, and it should. So we absolutely need to depend on trust. So a couple slides ago, I discussed why we choose to trust who the closest to us. And that was not great English. So let me say it again. So a couple slides ago, we discussed why you trust those people that are closest to you. But does that mean we never, or we shouldn't trust those who are not close to us? And in what instances would we trust a complete stranger? So here's a situation where you would trust a stranger, where trusting a stranger could mean life or death. And the situation or situations are in a time of uncertainty and when risk is involved. So in times of uncertainty, when we do not have all the information about a person or situation and we cannot completely control an outcome, and when risk is involved, when we assume that the benefits will outweigh risks, but the cost of a loss would be much greater. So here's an example. If you're in a burning building and a fireman appears outside of your 5th-story window on a ladder and tells you to grab his hand so he can pull you out of the window, would you say, well, before we move forward, I know the fire's right behind me and it's getting kind of hot and smoky, but before we move forward, can you show me your ID? Tell me how many years of experience you have. Also, could you provide some references I could call? No, without a thought, you would grab the fireman's hand, allow them to bring you down to safety, right? And as you can see, trust can be a leap of faith, and sometimes literally. And so how does that relate to business, right? So in a business example, sometimes we find ourselves in the figurative burning building. So for example, if you're reaching an important deadline for a huge client, it's millions of dollars on the line, and it's just hugely visible within your organization, and the 2 people on your team that were running the project come down with COVID-19 and they are out, and the only other people with experience are from a different team for which you have never met before, and you need them to come on board, and you need to trust that they can pick up where your team left off and deliver the results by the deadline. That's a ton of uncertainty. That's a ton of risk. But these people are in the same organization for which you decided to go to because they had a trusting environment. They had an amazing culture, and you're taking a leap of faith with trust, but they're in that same tribe with you. They're in the same circle of safety as you. And you're more apt to allow that to happen because 1, you kind of have to, but number 2, although you don't know these people, you feel comfortable with what they can provide, and especially to their ultimate result. So interpersonal strategies for building trust. So here's a little self-assessment to determine how you feel others perceive your trustworthiness. So competence, am I effective at work, or am I effective in the classroom? Reliability, can others count on me to follow through my commitments? Professionalism, do I show that I'm dedicated to my work and professional in my interactions? Consistency, is my behavior predictable across situations? Communication, am I accessible, willing to share information freely, and are open to others' opinions? Transparency, am I clear about what people need from me to succeed? Do I give explanations for decisions? Caring, do people believe I care about them? Fairness, am I fair in making decisions? And integrity, am I honest, moral, and consistent in words and deeds? So, maybe pause this and ask yourself these questions. And you really have to be honest with yourself. There's no one around to judge you. Be really honest with yourself. Where are you lacking here? This could really be a nice little self-assessment to say, okay, I may not be as consistent as I want to be. So now you know what it is, you can start to take steps to improve yourself. So steps for building trust. These are pretty straightforward, but if you're thinking about, okay, how do I actually start to build that trust? So provide clear goals, performance measures, and feedback. So when you're managing your team, there is nothing more important than being on the same page and your team knowing what your expectations are. And that's providing the clear goals, performance measures, and providing not yearly feedback, not twice a year feedback, continuous feedback. Maybe you have weekly one-on-ones with your team, providing them continuous feedback, answering their questions, challenging them, pushing them to be better. So be competent, be caring, consistent, predictable, reliable, and be fair. Very, very important to the trust, building your trust. And additional steps for building trust is communicate, be accessible, willing to share information, and give explanations for decisions. Justify why you came to a conclusion. That builds trust too, not just saying, you should never really say no or criticize someone, right? You should provide an explanation of how you came to that. Not only are they going to understand where you're coming from and respect your decision, but it's a great coaching and learning opportunity for the employee. Show integrity, be honest, moral, and consistent in your words and deeds. This should be like breathing to you. If you don't have integrity, you will not be trusted. You will not grow. Certainly, you will be looked down upon as well, and you won't have a great working environment. And so that you're willing to make sacrifices for the relationship, especially as a manager. I mentioned before, if someone's coming down hard on your employee, maybe step in and take that. Or if customers, step in and take the brunt of that force. Show you're willing to make a sacrifice for them. Optimal trust. So this is a very interesting slide. So optimal trust. How are you going to find the sweet spot for trusting others? And there's not a one size fits all answer, as everything is different. People are different. Situations are different. But understanding this slide, you can start to self-regulate and come to some sort of a balance. So you can trust too little or you could trust too much. So again, the situation really should dictate this, and it should not be a one size fits all. So when you're trusting too little, you're overly suspicious with people. You don't have a lot of relationships or meaningful relationships. You minimize the dependence on others. You resist others' attempts to influence. You're defensive. You're not opening up, providing information. If you're trusting too much, you're kind of gullible. You're going to do what people say. You're going to take unnecessary risk because someone may have suggested it. You say more than what is politically unwise. Discount our own judgment and just blindly follow others. So problems with trusting too few people. So, well, if we trust everyone, then we become overly dependent on others' interpretations and advice, which could lead us to make poor decisions or poor choices ourselves. But if we don't open up and trust people, we could lose valuable insight and especially experiences that could help bring a new perspective to a very difficult situation or problem. That's why diversity is so important in the workforce. Diverse thinkers, diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, and all these things combined, amongst a trustworthy group, certainly leads to the best solutions, and you build the best relationships that way. And so this quote here is, we take, we take far too much for granted with a trustworthy source. We assume that the source knows the many factors related to the situation, understands all the interconnections that influence the results, comprehends the whole interplay of subtle actions by many people leading to decision making. With a trustworthy source, we may unwittingly suspend our own power, observation, and judgment. So you probably heard, hey, make sure you get a second opinion or third opinion on getting that engine rebuilt, right? we hope and we want to see the best in people. We want to assume that everyone has positive intent when they're giving you a price or they're giving you direction. That's why you should never, if you read a book about a certain, if you read a book about Democrats, for example, you should read a book about Republicans, because if you start to deviate towards one process or one thought leadership side, and you're not gaining a holistic view, then you cannot make the best decisions. You're biased. You're going to make poor decisions. You're going to make poor choices because you don't have all the facts to make the right decision. And that's why it's important to be gaining different insights and interpretations, or reading a lot of different type of books and watching different channels. Don't just watch Fox, watch CNBC, watch CNN. You have to be able to get a holistic picture and not corner yourself, box yourself up, which will really lead you down a bad path. So rebuilding trust once broken. So as it says here, that both parties, when you're building trust, must believe that the relationship is worth saving and must be willing to invest the time and emotional energy into repairing the relationship. The loss of trust is extremely tough to overcome. Could be your boss promising you a promotion, but then giving it to someone else, your girlfriend or boyfriend cheating on you, or maybe you trusted a name brand and you found out they use child labor, and that kind of just destroys your trust. So, some relationships you have invested a ton of time in. Think about your brother or sister, right? And you're more willing to put in the energy to rebuild that trust. Others, like a person who said they would save a seat for you at the movie theater and gives it to someone else, and then when you return from the bathroom, it's not there. That's something we can easily forget. And there's no investment in there. There's no time investment. There's no emotional investment in that situation. So you need to think through what relationships are worth saving. So especially your professional relationships are worth saving. If you're married, is worth saving. Your family is worth saving. But sometimes with family, friends, people at the movie theater, it's unsalvageable. And again, you have to make that decision. And don't make a decision in a vacuum. Don't think short term. Think long term. Think about what the long term value of this relationship is to you. Should you be burning that bridge? Meaning, should you be attacking this situation where it won't be repairable of how you handle it because you handle it so poorly? Think about what needs to be. Should you be rebuilding that trust? And like I said, you got to really think about the long term when you're deciding that. And if you do decide, maybe it's something that you did unwittingly or wittingly, and maybe it was a poor choice, bad judgment, and you didn't make an apology. So what's the art of an apology? So you want to acknowledge the breach of trust has occurred. You don't want to ever be coy or shy about it. You get out in the open. And people respect that because they don't want to see a cover-up. Be specific rather than general about what you did. Hey, sorry about the thing I did the other day. That's not. It's too generalized. It's not personalized. You're not investing in the apology. Acknowledge that you hurt that person. People want to be acknowledged and want to be apologized to, not have you say stuff to make yourself feel better. They want to make sure it's sincere. Explain why you did what you did in a way that you take responsibility for your actions. The worst thing people can do when they apologize is blame external factors. They never blame themselves. It's such a pet peeve of mine, actually, in the business world. But explain why you did it. Take responsibility for it, and that's it. Just end it. We don't want to hear that your car broke down or your dog ate your homework or the 1,000 other things that you could say. At the end of the day, you didn't get it done. Or you didn't deliver when you said you're going to deliver, or you hurt that person. So say you're willing to do what it takes to repair the trust. Don't just, don't just say you're going to do something. Do it and make sure you do it. And avoid pseudo apologies. So a wrong approach is, I'm sorry you feel that way. Right? You're putting it back on there. I'm sorry that you can't overcome this because it's your problem. You. Instead of you, the right approach is, I'm sorry that I've broken your trust in me. You see, I, then me. You're you're accepting responsibility and you're owning it. So organizational strategies for building trust. So develop a collective identity. Again, organizational strategies for creating trust. You're developing a collective identity. It's the same thing as building a culture, a good working environment. You're trying to get like-minded people. You're trying to have them all follow the same path, the same reach for the same goals, have the same values and same mission, same vision. That provide clear goals, job expectations, standards, and performance measures. They talked about that before. Provide predictable routines. There's nothing easier than getting the best out of your people when you make the mundane repeatable. That way they don't have to spend so much time on it. They can spend more time being creative. They can spend more time being more efficient in the work and the output. Definitely think about building predictable routines, processes as they're called. Communicate consistent messages in words and deeds in good and bad times. So don't just praise people when it's convenient and really shy away from having those tough conversations. You will build more trust. This might sound counterproductive, but you will build more trust with someone if you're upfront honest and you give it to them straight and you say what they did and how they can fix it and how you're going to help them become better, right? It's those times where people may feel bad that they need you the most. And that's when you need to step up and be honest and transparent. Continue on organizational strategies for creating trust. Enable employees to have some control of their work and their time. This is called autonomy, giving the employee an ability to be creative, to do things that you would not have done them. There's a lot of different ways to get to the same goal. There's different paths. Maybe your path is straighter than theirs, but allowing them to get there on their own, allow them to stumble, allow them to fall down, allow them to get back up. It's all part of the learning process, and that builds such confidence for them as well. And manage employees who undermine trust. So the employees may not be even where they're doing this. It might be how they're brought up, how they're grown up, and they might come from a different company where this was okay, where the culture was terrible. So helping to educate them and encouraging them to self-assess is important to correct this behavior, and then catching them in the act of upholding that trust is important too, because it will help to gradually help them in that change, and it'll create some positivity as well. All right, how to tell if mistrust is festering. So these are things you can identify within your work, your own team. Are people communicating less? Are they doing less with each other? Do employees avoid giving you bad news? As mentioned before, how can I help you be successful if you don't trust me to provide me that information? Do employees avoid meetings? Right? I got another doctor's appointment, or whatever it might be. Does morale seem to be deteriorating? Do people seem down? What's the mood like? What's the attitudes like? You got to be gauging this thing. So managing is not just giving people stuff to do. It's paying attention. It's observing. And it's really coming up with ways to keep people engaged and motivated. Are some employees not speaking up at meetings? Are they feeling shy? Have they faced backlash from others from speaking up and saying something? And has that causing people to feel less inclined to speak up? Is there an increase in absenteeism or turnover? As I mentioned before about in a couple slides ago, where that individual contributor became a new manager and she was so focused on him or herself that he or she forgot to bring up the team and help them be successful and taking the praise for their work. Those people are not going to stay. They want an enriching environment, and people don't really leave companies, they leave their manager. And especially seeing more people take tons of PTO, pay time off, have absenteeism. They got their 10th migraine of the month all of a sudden. Are employees blaming other people in the departments for problems? If they don't feel they have a trusting environment to be honest, to be truthful, to be vulnerable to you, then they're not going to put themselves in that position to get hurt or be put down. They can start blaming other people. So this book has this. It's called Swift Trust. So this essentially, I'll go into the description here, but essentially Swift Trust is when you're engaged in a temporary team. So think about if you're like a counselor at a summer camp, right? You're never going to see those people. We might see them again, but let's just say you don't, right? It's temporary. They're in different grades or whatever it might be. Or even in the business world, you're doing this, you have a huge corporation and they're picking one person from departments across the whole organization, where they're doing a big training and everyone's coming and you got to work together in small groups. You're never going to see them again. You're never going to see their name again. So anyway, Swift trust is a kind of depersonalized trust that's developed in temporary groups when there isn't time to engage in the usual forms of confidence building activities that contribute to the development and the maintenance of trust. It's just a quick thing. It's being it comes down to being professional, being kind to one another in a very short period of time. Positive emotions and trust. So how positive emotions contribute to success. So people who feel and express that their positive emotions, they feel they're optimistic, they've got hope, kindness, resilience, gratitude, their forgiveness, and that translates to feeling more confident, reaching for higher goals, acknowledging that there's a bigger picture that we got to go down. They think more broadly, they're more creative, they're seeking out new information and experiences, they're taking more risks and being flexible in the process. And really, all these comes down to is, and then what this translates to is having better results, having a more fulfilled career, and having being more positive, have a better well-being as well. So extremely important positive emotions can lead to this stuff. So teams and positive interactions. So I'm just going to read this quote. This is from the Complex Dynamics of High Performance Teams. Teams have a significantly more positive than negative interactions. Those teams with a ratio of approximately 6 positive to each negative interaction tend to outperform other teams in terms of profitability, customer satisfaction, and evaluations from bosses, peers, and direct reports. Positive interactions include support, encouragement, or appreciation, and negative interactions include disapproval, sarcasm, or cynicism. So it's very important that you're really surrounding yourself with good people. And that really comes down to the hiring process, which is kind of out of scope for this lecture, but very important to have the right people, very important to be fostering that sense of trust, that strong culture that everyone can feel comfortable in, to feel positive in. So how to build positive emotions at work, right? So here are, let's see, 5. Express positive emotions. Sometimes as a manager, not everyone's going to come in being happy-go-lucky. You got a flat tire, you hit a deer the night before, the dog got out, you got to run around across the neighborhood. You're not always going to have positive emotions, but it doesn't mean you can't express and try. And when you are able to express positive emotions, you're the leader of this team. They're going to start emulating you. They're going to start copying you, and they're going to feel okay to do so. Engage in positive deviance. Help people find meaning in day-to-day lives. Help people find meaning in a crisis, right? So every crisis has an opportunity. It's even with the COVID, you see opportunities for some businesses to thrive. Some delivery companies are thriving. Try to find something within a crisis that there's an opportunity, kind of exploit that, and provide people with opportunities to help each other and express appreciation. The team collaboration is huge. Now, that's why diversity is important as well. When you're able to interact with people that are not like you, that means you're able to obtain information you wouldn't have thought of. And that's what's important about collaboration, helping each other. And that builds so much trust, right? And that's where friendship and strong relationships come out of. So that is our lecture for chapter 3. I hope this was insightful. And if you have any questions, I would definitely encourage you to email me, and I'll be happy to address them. Thanks, everyone.